Hi friends, it's Victor Costa, and welcome to the Daily Lift. I hope you're having an outstanding day, and I hope today's podcast makes it even better for you. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a PhD in worrying? Is worrying your pastime? Do you spend most of your time worrying, and then when the situation that you're worrying about abates or gets resolved, do you search your database in your mind for other things to worry about? In other words, are you always on the constant hunt for things to worry about? Now, this podcast today is really dedicated to those of you who really have worry as a pastime. I can certainly understand this, and I can certainly empathize. I work with a lot of people who continuously worry, and I know what it feels like to worry myself. But I want to illustrate for you something that happened to me recently to see if we can help in any way sort of soothe or abate worrying for you to some degree. Now, I had a medical test done very, very recently, and I had to wait 4 days for the results. While I was waiting, I worried incessantly. I wasn't able to focus on my job. I wasn't able to focus on enjoying anything or seeing the future. I basically had this worry stuck in my vibration, and that's all I could think about. And I really wasn't even thinking. It was more of a paralysis and a sense and feeling of worry rather than going through the concepts or potential outcomes and how I would handle them. And so, of course, 4 days later, I get the results of my test, and I was totally fine. And I looked back and I thought to myself, wow, I just spent 4 days of my life worrying about an exam. I am fortunate that the exam turned out well and that I'm totally fine. But let's wonder what would happen if the exam had very, very grave news to report to me. In other words, let's say that the results of the exam were really, really very bad. I would have given up 4 days of my life to the potential outcome of the exam, when indeed those may have been the 4 days that I had left to enjoy myself and to relax. So I thought about that. I thought about both outcomes. I thought about if the outcome was good, there was obviously no need to worry. And if the outcome was bad, this would probably be the 4 last worry-free days of my life that I just gave up. And so I thought to myself, how productive can worry be? Worry isn't planning. Worry isn't deliberating. Worry is just a sense and an overall feeling. So you can see in my scenario of waiting for the exam results that it made no sense either way. I could have either had 4 worry-free days in either direction, especially if the news was going to be bad. Let me at least enjoy these 4 days without having this information to deal with. And so there are people who can even receive the gravest news and still not have worry in their vibration. In other words, they get the information and then they make a plan of how to deal with it, whether it's a bad diagnosis or a financial disaster. Some people can still stay out of the vibration of worry. And so I hope today's podcast is really created to help you recognize the worry in my case. If you were my friend and I had taken the results or taken the examination, what advice would you give to me in the 4 days that I would have to wait for the results? You would probably say, well, I don't want to scare you, but if the results are bad, you should probably whoop it up and have a good time now before you find out. And if the results are good, then there was really, you're going to look back and lament on the 4 days that you wasted worrying. So that's the advice you would give to me. So what I want to help you with is just that reminder of giving yourself this advice. Worry is completely useless. It's not planning. It's not even thinking. It's more of an overwhelming kind of feeling. Now, I want to remind you that when you worry, you release a stress hormone called cortisol. This is not good. Of course, this is really to handle the fight or flight, but when that energy is not used and you are put in an incessant realm of worrying, this stress hormone can be extremely deleterious to one's health. It can create everything from anxiety to depression to heart disease and have physical ramifications on your body, depleting the immune system and making you more susceptible to disease as well. And I want to remind you of that too, not to give you something else to worry about, but also to remind you that most people think that worrying occurs above the neck, so to speak, that it's just a psychological phenomenon or just something that affects our thoughts. And yeah, maybe we can lament some of the wasted time when the situation abates or we recover from it. But I want to remind you of the physical toll that it takes on your body. So truly taking care of yourself would include trying to reduce the worry in your life. Now, how can you do that? There's a lot of ways. The first is to potentially write down the item at hand, what you're worrying about, and then write out a list of potential solutions. Just getting it on paper will absolutely help. Also, to take a break from the worrying, decide that if you are an incessant worrier, that you're going to set aside some time, a free period, if you will, where you're not going to think about anything. Even if you worry 24 hours a day, if you can just set aside 15 minutes that you are going to give yourself a break and to not think about the particular topic at hand. And by the way, just so you know, thinking about the topic over and over and over and the thing that you're worried about is not going to make it any better, right? So to remind you that this takes a physical toll on the body, that you can take a break from it if you want to, set up a specific designated time to take that break, and then also write down the worry and then write a list of potential action steps that could help alleviate the situation at hand, whatever it is that you're worried about. So let's take the gravest situation. Let's take the concept that you're going to have a bad outcome of a physical exam like I was waiting for, right? Let's write down a list of steps. Let's say that the diagnosis is cancer. Well, you're going to find yourself the best cancer doctor in your area. You're going to find a support group, and you're going to list a group of things that you're going to do to maintain a positive attitude and keep healthy as you're going through this. And so that would make you feel absolutely more empowered than just feeling overcome and overwhelmed by taking action steps or writing down action steps that how you're going to get help and how you're going to deal with this. And so let's think about that, right? Let's think about the worry that we have. Let's try to lessen the burden on ourselves physically, emotionally, and mentally by taking some action steps, by writing it down, by setting aside a free period, by meditating. What meditating is really good for is for taking a break away from your thoughts. It's taking a break from the cycle of thoughts. So that's something else that you can do. So I hope this podcast gives you some relief. Please think of my story of waiting for the exam, and think if you were to give me advice right after I take that exam, what you would do within that 4-day block, and then give that advice to yourself. I wish you all the best. In good health, Victor Costa signing off for the Daily Lift.